You're listening to Winnipeg's Classic 107. My name is Simon Rusnak. Named for the vast and ancient glacial lake that used to cover most of this part of the continent, the Agassiz Festival returns to bathe us in a week-long celebration of chamber music from Sunday through next Saturday. This year's festival, titled When Worlds Converge, features a rich variety of musical styles. And to preview this year's programming, I'm joined by Artistic Director Paul Marlane. Hello.
Hey, Simon. So good to be here again.
Well, it's so good to have you back on Classic 107. And more importantly, it's so good to have you back in Winnipeg. How does it feel to be in town?
Well, it's extraordinary that it's been 2 years since I was actually in Winnipeg. And of course, that's because of the pandemic. In 2020 and 21, it wasn't frankly responsible for either artistic director or out-of-town artists to be flying in. I don't think it was even feasible or legal. So we, you probably remember in 2020, we had some online at home with an artist events. And then 2021, we had a full festival, but completely online. And we're so excited to be back with in-person live concerts. I'm so happy to be actually seeing the Agassiz team and the Agassiz community in person, being able to, I don't know. I mean, the human interaction is so wonderful to have.
It is so true. And as we were talking about before we went to air, not only the human interaction, but also the opportunity to make music together in a room again is just so special. You mentioned the virtual festivities that took place last year, Agassiz Connected. I'm curious, is there any sort of rust in returning to this type of format, or does the excitement do away with any of that?
I'm not sure there's any rust because there have been some live concerts.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, all the way through the pandemic, I've been giving the odd concert here and there, just socially distanced, with audience socially distanced, or a very kind of a smaller audience. So those things have been happening, and artists have been getting together, sometimes playing in the same room, but then being broadcast or streamed. So I'm not sure there's that rust, but what is so interesting is what the pandemic has taught us or invited us to embrace. The online experience, I think, actually a good friend of mine who's kind of younger generation mentioned to me that the pandemic had forced classical music to catch up with all of the other types of music in terms of online presence and online skills and an online kind of facility, just being used to performing online. And I think that's really a great comment. So yeah, I mean, Agassiz this year, pretty much all our concerts will be broadcast online as well as live. So I think that's what the pandemic has given us, which is really terrific. And there are many benefits to that. One being the fact that we discovered last year that we had a whole new audience, whole new online audience. If you can believe it, 66% of our audience was actually from out of the city, and in many cases out of the country.
Wow.
So that was just a completely different audience we didn't know existed, and we never would have discovered without the pandemic. So now, in a way, it's kind of the pandemic forced Agassiz to become national and international in scope, which is really, really wonderful.
And that's what you continue this year, as you mentioned, not only in-person concert, but also online concerts for anyone, anywhere. And I think that speaks to the caliber of the concerts that Agassiz puts together. And I guess when I was thinking about the rust, I was thinking more about, rather than one-off concerts or perhaps a weekend concert, this is 7 nights of music making. Now, you're not performing in every single night, I don't think, but there's still a real commitment that comes with a week-long festival. And it's a festival that gets underway this Sunday with a concert titled Made in America, featuring one of Canada's most respected chamber music ensembles, the Penderecki String Quartet, who'll be performing in a number of shows over the week. Paul, what are you most looking forward to about having the Pendereckis here in Winnipeg?
Well, aside from the fact that they're wonderful people, and I've known them for many years, actually for about 30 years, kind of in various guises. Working with them is really wonderful, and enjoying their performance, because they're so serious about what they do. They're also very adventurous, so they embrace music right from the age of Bach and the Baroque era, um, up to today. And they're often working with living composers and young living composers. So they've kept a wonderful sense of adventurousness about them, which I really enjoy.
Like you say, they have been doing their thing for a long time. They're in their 35th anniversary year, I think, if the math is correct. And that adventurousness continues in the programming. A number of concerts they'll be playing in with a wide variety of composers, and that's exactly this year's theme, right? When worlds converge, they're exemplifying that in their programming, but also the Agassiz programming as a whole, right?
Yes, absolutely. And that's also something that I think the pandemic encouraged us to do, is really gave us a bit of time to think about how we present concerts and what we want to present. And the world is changing, and the Black Lives Matter movement and Every Child Counts. And I think these are really important movements internationally and in Canada. And Agassiz, like many cultural organizations, we want to embrace that sense of change and diversity. So we're really happy that we've been able to do that to a certain extent this year, and so it's something we want to continue to embrace.
We won't be able to recount every composer and piece and kind of play-by-play of what's going to be going on from Sunday through next Saturday, but I do want to touch on a few of the other highlights. This festival brings in some great talent, the Pendereckis, and then there's another special group that's going to be performing. But just before we get to that, I also want to point out that this series gives outstanding players based here in Winnipeg the opportunity to make music together too, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have a new series this year, actually called Among Friends, and the next generation to a previous series which was called From the Next Generation, and that was featuring young up and coming Winnipeg musicians. And we felt there was something a little bit ageist about that, so we wanted also to encourage some of our very talented amateur musicians in the city and in the province we wanted to invite them to also be able to participate. I don't think we actually have any amateur groups this year, but that's something for the future. So that's the reason why we have Among Friends as a new series. We have also our Emerging Artists series, and Christina Thanish-Smith, wonderful Winnipeg soprano, will be performing in that. So yes, that's the education side of our mandate, is something we really value.
And I think, you mentioned Christina, who's been on Classic 107 many a time, studying at McGill currently. There's also Milana Milovanovic and Luis Almeida, who've also been on the program. Among Friends, opening on the Monday show, which features Carl Stobie, a Winnipeg favorite, of course, and a Winnipeg bred pianist, Paul Williamson, who's here in town and has really been making a name for himself, in the musical scene across Canada and stateside as well. Paul, there's so much that's going on in this festival, and one of the things that I also want to point out before we get to some of the other players is that this year Agassiz is going to be taking place at a different venue and different venues than in previous years, right?
Yes, you're right. It's amazing, Simon. You've really done your research.
It's a good when that happens, I think. Yeah.
Yes. So we've been based out of the University of Winnipeg, and we've enjoyed a wonderful relationship with them. The university had to make a decision actually around a month ago as to whether the university could be open to external organizations throughout the summer, and they elected to only open in the fall to external organizations. So we had to make a very quick dance and find another location. In fact, we were delighted to be invited to present our concerts at Canadian Mennonite University, where actually we had 3 concerts last year, which worked really, really beautifully. So that's in the Laudaumus Auditorium. So we're excited to be doing that. Of course, we don't want to lose touch with the University of Winnipeg. So maybe in next year, we might be able to rekindle the connection there. But yes, we're looking forward to being in Laudamus. Also, the Cinematheque is a venue for an online concert given by Quartetto Gelato. Of course, so Quartetto Gelato is not only famed for their love of ice cream, but for their wonderful, the wonderful eclectic programs. I mean, it's a fantastic group. The cellist is an old friend of mine, Kirk Starkey, and they're going to be playing in Halifax, and we're going to stream them. So it's a concert that's not in person, but it's streamed, and that's a new departure in an in-person live festival for us. Something we thought would be fun to do, and Quartetto Gelato are really good at this sort of thing. So yeah, that's great. And then the last concert is at St Andrew's United Church, which we're really happy about. CMU actually wasn't available on the last night, and we've had connections with St Andrews before, so that's on June 11th.
Most of those concerts taking place at Laudamus, as you say, at CMU, but not all. So make sure you check before heading out to any or all of the Agassiz Chamber Music Festival shows. You mentioned the Quartetto Gelato. They are just so much fun. And they're in that program that they're going to be presenting virtually is titled Tasty Tunes. And I have to say, I mean, there's all sorts of clever titles that accompany these shows, but this has to be one of my favorites because they are just a delicious bunch of musicians in terms of what they present. And it just gives you so much music to bite into and just enjoy, right?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I love what they do. Also, the Broken Songs band, led by Glenn Buer with special guest Duncan Mercredi. We're really excited about that concert called "This City Is Red." So that'll be quite an interesting concert. And Glenn Buer, of course, has been such a leading light in Winnipeg for so many years. So that band, that'll be, I think, a fantastic evening too. The first half is a little bit more in the flavor of traditional Agassiz, and then we go in a slightly different direction in the second half, which I'm really looking forward to.
Yeah, I'm just glancing down at the program, and there's music of Ervo Pert and Leo Shanachik and David Popper, but then we get into the Duncan Mercredi work, and he, of course, the great Cree Métis writer and storyteller and Winnipeg's poet laureate. So like you say, it should be a very moving evening of music.
So. Yeah.
Paul, we're only just scratching the surface in all the programming at Agassiz this year. We have all the details up at classic107.com under the events tab. Looking forward to organizing a few more conversations ahead of some of the performances next week. But in the meantime, those interested can head to agassizfestival.com for tickets and festival passes, whether those are in person or online. Thanks so much for taking the time to reconnect with us here at Classic 107, and congrats again on the return of Agassiz in person.
Thanks so much, Simon. It's so great to see you again.